This video was brought to you in part by the supporters of the AMTV Patreon. Thank you. Hello, and welcome to the Ident Review Extra, the spin-off show that takes a look at one individual ident each episode and gives it the review it deserves. And this time around, we're embarking on a journey through the ITV Network and all the different regional stations that comprised it. We're sticking in the Midlands to look at the successor to ATV, Central. Last time around, we looked at Associated Television, or ATV, who primarily served the Midlands region from the mid-1950s up until the early 80s. After a franchise review decreed that ATV must restructure and rebrand itself in the hopes of better serving the Midlands area, in 1982, viewers would wave goodbye to the familiar blue and yellow tones of ATV and welcome in its brand new name, Central Television, or simply Central. For its first few years on the air, the on-screen ident was a rather simple affair, representing the sort of moon-shaped sphere with a gentle yet catchy tune to go with it. However, from around 1985, the Central logo was switched up to not only be more modern in terms of available technology, but also in terms of its overall structure and depth. So, without further ado, let's take a look at a few examples of what is affectionately known as the cake ident. Had you ever seen a more 80s sequence in your life? It's quite clear that from the off, the cake ident was heavily inspired by some of its contemporaries from other channels. Channel 4 broke ground with its 3D ident, the multicoloured blocks swooping in to form the iconic logo that the channel still uses today. This ident debuted in 1982, and it inspired several other channels to also switch to a more three-dimensional look. BBC One followed suit in 1985, and Central did that same year. Similar to Channel 4, we see several blocks being flown around or zooming in around to eventually form the ribbed Central logo. I love the use of the different colours to contrast the main white shade of the image. It just gives it that bit of extra personality, life, and also memorability for those watching at home. From the examples we saw, it's clear that the designers were willing to experiment and try out different ideas and structures for the Central sequence. The cake motif itself would continue to last on Central in some shape or form, all the way up until the late 1990s. By that point, most regions were beginning to use the new ITV branding to predominantly broadcast with. The name Central would still crop up from time to time, but for many, it's these different cake idents that most audiences, particularly those in the Midlands, remember most fondly. They may not feel like the most groundbreaking idents of all time. They take several cues from other sequences, and by today's standards they may seem a tad dated, but for the most part, I believe the Central cake ident achieved many of the key factors that television idents need to in order to be successful and then remembered. The main element was simple, yet effective. The final image was eye-catching and memorable, and the willingness to try different routes to get there helped keep the sequences feeling fresh and new. I mean, this did last for over a decade after all. So let's raise a glass to Central, the way it reinvented its visual identity from where ATV left off, and how it was able to serve the Midlands all the way up until the dawn of the 21st century and beyond. And so that brings us to the end of another episode of the Ident Review Extra. If you enjoyed this look back at the cake ident from Central, then please leave a like, comment your thoughts below, and subscribe to the channel for lots more ident related content. I've been Adam Martyn from AMTV, thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time. Well, that does bring us to the end of another day here on AMTV. We do hope you enjoyed the programme, and a special thank you to our patrons for helping to support the show, and to everyone who's tuned in. Until the next broadcast, we wish you a good night.